All right, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something every single team runs into, making those really tough decisions when the stakes are high, and let's be honest, opinions are all over the place. We're going to break down an amazing tool that can take all that group chaos and turn it into clear, confident action.
I mean, really think about it. You've been there, right? That big project kickoff, the annual budget meeting, or even just trying to decide on a new piece of software. How do you make sure the best idea actually wins, and not just, the one from the person who talks the loudest?
Does any of this sound painfully familiar? The loudest person in the room gets their way. Someone's hidden agenda quietly steers the whole conversation. You debate and debate until you're just stuck. And then, even if you do make a choice, nobody's really on board. Yeah, it's a total recipe for disaster.
But hey, there is a much, much better way. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll introduce this powerful tool for getting clear. Then we're going to walk through it step by step. We'll start by weighing what's important, then rating our choices, and finally, we'll do the simple math that points you straight to your best possible choice.
So let's meet the hero of our story. The tool that brings logic, fairness, and consensus to the table is called the Prioritization Matrix.
So what is it? Well, at its core, it's a system. It's a structured way for a group to look at different options, but not just based on gut feelings. It uses criteria that everyone on the team agrees on, weighs them, and then applies them to each option. And that's the magic word right there, systematically.
And the benefits? Oh, they're huge. For one, it yanks disagreements right out into the open so you can deal with them. It helps you cut through all the noise and narrow down a long list of ideas to find the best one. And because everything's out on the table, it pretty much kills those hidden agendas. Best of all, since the team builds the decision together, everyone is way more likely to actually support it in the end.
Okay, so a quick heads up. There are a few different ways to do this, but today we're going to focus on what's called the full analytical criteria method. It sounds fancy, but it's perfect for a small team, say 3 to 8 people, who are staring down a single, really high-stakes decision, where you absolutely have to get it right. All right, let's get our hands dirty with step 1, weighing your criteria. This is so important. Before you can even think about your options, the whole team has to agree on what actually matters most for making this decision.
This step has 4 parts. First, you all agree on the main goal and the list of criteria you'll use to measure it. Next, you'll build a simple grid to compare every criterion against every other one. Then, you'll use a special scoring scale to figure out their importance. And finally, a little bit of math gives you a final weight for each one. Simple.
And this is the scale you're going to use. When you compare 2 criteria, you just ask, is one more important? If it's a little more important, you give it a 5. If it's way more important, that's a 10. And if they're basically equal, it's a 1. Now, pay attention to the other side. Less important. You see 0.2 and 0.1? Those aren't random numbers. They're the mathematical reciprocals of 5 and 10. And trust me, that's going to be super important in just a second.
Let's make this real. Imagine your team is buying a company car. Your first 2 criteria are cost and reliability. The team debates and asks, okay, which is more important, cost or reliability? They decide reliability is more important, so boom, they put a 5 in that box where reliability meets cost.
Okay, stop. This right here, this is probably the single most important rule of the entire process. It's what makes all the math work out perfectly. Every time you put a number in a box, you have to immediately put its reciprocal in the mirror image box on the other side of the diagonal.
And here's exactly what that looks like in practice. Since we decided reliability versus cost gets a 5, that means cost versus reliability has to get the reciprocal of 5, which is 0.2. It just means cost is less important than reliability. You'll do this for every single comparison until your grid is totally filled out. See how they're mirror images? That's what you want.
Okay, great job. We're moving on to step 2. Now that you know how important each of your criteria are, it's time to actually rate your options. How well does each choice, each car in our example, stack up against the standards you just set?
Okay, listen up, because this is super important and a common place to get tripped up. You're going to repeat a process that looks a lot like step 1, but you have to create a completely separate matrix for each and every criterion. So if you have 4 criteria, cost, reliability, safety, and style, you're about to make 4 brand new grids.
So for instance, this is the grid just for the cost criterion. When the team compares the brand new Chevy to Uncle Henry's old car on cost alone, they decide Uncle Henry's car is a way better deal. So it's more important and gets a 5.
The expensive new Chevy gets the reciprocal, 0.2. Once this grid is full, you do a quick calculation to get a rating for each car just on cost. Then you do this whole thing again for reliability and again for safety and so on.
All right, deep breath. You've done all the heavy lifting, all the debating, all the rating. Now for the fun part. Let's get to the final step and see how all this work magically turns into one single clear answer.
This is it, the final summary matrix. Check it out. Across the top, you've got your criteria, cost and reliability. And right there in the parentheses are those final criteria weights we calculated way back in step 1. And then running down the side, you've got your actual options, your cars.
Now, don't let the word formula scare you. This is the easiest part. For every single empty box in that grid, you just take the criteria weighting from the top of the column and multiply it by the option rating you just figured out in the last step. That's it. That gives you the final score for that box.
And voila, here it is, all filled in. Let's just take one box so you can see how easy it is. Look at the new Chevy under cost. We take the cost weight, which is 0.25, and multiply it by the Chevy-specific rating for cost, which we calculated as 0.12 back in step 2. So 0.25 times 0.12 gives us 0.03. We do that for every single cell. Then we add up the rows and calculate that final relative decimal. Now, just keep your eyes on that last column. That's where the answer's hiding.
This is the moment of truth, the big reveal. After all that discussion and consensus building, the data your team created is about to give you the answer. No more guesswork, no more gut feelings.
So how do we know who won? It's simple. You just look for the highest number in that final relative decimal column. It represents the one option that best satisfies all the criteria weighted by what your team decided was most important. And in our example, that number is 0.48.
Which means, drumroll please, our winner, the best choice according to the team's own logic and shared values, is Uncle Henry's car. It might not be the newest or the fastest, but based on what the team agreed was most important, cost and reliability, it's the clear, data-driven winner.
So, there you have it. You now have this incredible framework to turn those messy, subjective, chaotic debates into objective, clear, consensus-driven decisions. So think about your own work, your own team. What's that one big, hairy, complicated decision you could finally get some clarity on using this?